I didn't hear the missile that hit us. I only felt the world spin. Then came the screaming of the engines, the tearing of metal, and finally, the silence. I woke up hanging upside down in the cockpit, the smell of jet fuel burning my lungs. My co-pilot was gone. The entire front half of the Black Hawk was gone. I unclipped my harness and fell into the mud, gasping for air. My mission was simple: drop the containment payload and leave. But looking at the burning wreckage scattered across the jungle floor, I realized the mission had changed. Now the objective was just to survive. I checked my chest. The corporate ID tags were still there, cold against my skin. Biohazard Containment Team. If anyone on this island could read, those tags were a death warrant. I wasn't a rescuer, I was the cleaner, and I had just crashed directly into the containment zone. I tried to stand, but a sharp pain shot through my leg. I was bleeding, and in a jungle like this, blood is louder than a siren. That's when the jungle went quiet. The birds stopped singing, the insects stopped buzzing. A heavy, suffocating pressure filled the air. I felt it before I saw it, a gaze, heavy and hot, burning into the back of my neck. I wasn't alone. I scrambled backward, gripping my service pistol with shaking hands. I expected a lion, maybe a panther. I prepared myself to fight an animal, but when the bushes parted, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It stood on two legs. It wore primitive armor made from the scrap metal of my own company's previous failed expeditions. It had the body of a woman, but the skin of a predator, orange fur broken by black war stripes, human muscles coiled tight, ready to snap. She looked at me not with the instinct of a beast, but with the calculation of a soldier. And she wasn't alone. Dozens of them emerged from the shadows. Hybrids, the lost experiments. They moved with a fluid, terrifying grace, circling me. I raised my gun, but a spear flew from the tree line and pinned my shoulder to the tree behind me. I screamed, dropping the weapon. They didn't want to kill me, not yet. The leader stepped forward, her golden eyes dilating as she smelled the fresh blood. She hissed a command, and the world went black as they dragged me into the green hell. I woke up to the sensation of being dragged over jagged metal. My head was throbbing, but the sight in front of me sobered me up instantly. I expected a cave. I expected mud huts and primitive fires. What I saw was a graveyard of my own sins. The fortress wasn't made of wood. It was built from the twisted fuselages of downed aircrafts, the rusted ribs of containment ships, and the armor plates of the soldiers who had died here before me. I stared at a wall made of a helicopter door, the faded logo of my corporation still visible under the scratch marks. I had signed the invoice for that machine 5 years ago. Now it was my prison. They hauled me through the center of the camp, throwing me onto the wet ground. The air here was heavy, smelling of ozone and rotting meat. But as I looked around at the warriors watching me, I noticed something terrifying. They weren't just angry, they were dying. The female guarding me coughed, a wet, rattling sound that shook her entire body. She wiped her mouth, and I saw the black, tar-like blood on her hand. The virus, the strain my team was sent to contain, hadn't disappeared. It was eating them alive from the inside out. I looked at the others, sunken eyes, black veins pulsing under their fur, tremors in their hands. They were rotting while they stood. If they knew that I was the one carrying the original samples, they wouldn't just kill me. They would tear me apart slowly to see what made me tick. They dragged me to the center of the camp and shoved me into an old, rusted pilot's chair bolted to the ground. The straps were tight, cutting into my wrists. Then the crowd parted. Silence fell over the camp, heavy and electric. The Alpha approached. She was different from the others. Taller, her stripes darker, her human face marred by a long, jagged scar running from her temple to her jaw. She didn't walk. She stalked. She stopped inches from my face. I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. She smelled of iron and fever. She didn't speak at first. She leaned in, her nose twitching, inhaling my scent deeply. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I waited for the bite. I waited for her to rip out my throat. Instead, she grabbed my chin with a hand that felt like a steel vise, turning my face to the light. Her claws dug into my skin, drawing a drop of blood. She watched the droplet run down my neck with an intensity that terrified me more than any weapon. "You smell clean," she whispered. Her voice was a distorted growl, human words forced through a predator's throat. She released my chin roughly and turned to her pack. She pointed at me, her eyes wild with a mixture of hatred and desperation. "Look at him," she roared. "He breathes the same poison air, but he does not cough. His veins are blue, not black. He is not breaking." She turned back to me, slamming her hands on the armrests of the chair, trapping me. "What do you carry inside, human? Is your blood medicine, or is it just luck?" I couldn't answer. If I told her the truth, that I was vaccinated against the very plague destroying her people, I was dead. If I lied, I was dead. She pressed a claw against my chest, right over my heart. I could feel her searching for the rhythm, checking if my heart skipped a beat, checking if I was infected. She was desperate. She wasn't looking for a prisoner. She was looking for a cure. For a second, I saw the fear behind her rage. She knew her time was running out. She bared her fangs, preparing to open me up right there in the chair, to find the answers in my blood. But before her teeth could graze my skin, a sound tore through the night. A siren, not a mechanical one, but a biological howl that echoed from the jungle darkness, deep, guttural, and terrifyingly loud. The alpha froze, her pupils contracted to pinpricks, the aggression drained from her face, replaced instantly by pure, primal panic. She let me go and spun around, sniffing the air violently. The entire camp erupted into chaos. Warriors who had looked ready to kill me were now scrambling for weapons, backing away from the gates, looking at the darkness with wide, terrified eyes. The alpha looked back at me, and for the first time we were on the same side. We were both prey. "They're early," she muttered, her voice trembling. "The males never hunt this close to the walls." She looked at the blood on her finger, my blood, and then at the gate. Realization hit her like a physical blow. They didn't come for the territory. They didn't come for the females. They smell you. They smell the clean meat. The ground beneath us vibrated as something massive slammed into the outer perimeter, bending the steel plates like wet cardboard. The hunt was on. Boom! The sound wasn't just a knock, it was an earthquake. The steel gates of the fortress, built to withstand anti-aircraft fire, bulged inward like aluminum foil. The rivets popped, flying through the air like shrapnel. One of them took off a warrior's ear, but she didn't even scream. She was too busy staring at the door with the kind of paralyzing fear that turns soldiers into statues. Nala looked at me, and the accusation in her eyes was clear. "You did this." For 10 years, the males had settled for scraps, for the sick and the dying. But tonight, the scent of my healthy, oxygen-rich blood had driven them into a frenzy. Nala grabbed her bone knife. For a split second, I thought she was going to slit my throat and throw my body over the wall to appease the beast. It would have been the smart play. It would have saved her tribe. But she wasn't just a survivor. She was a general. She knew that once the blood frenzy started, the beast wouldn't stop until it had eaten everything. With a snarl of frustration, she didn't kill me. She slashed the ropes binding my wrists. The sudden rush of blood to my hands felt like fire. She hauled me up by my collar and shoved a crude, rusted spear into my chest.
"You rang the dinner bell," she hissed, her hot breath against my ear. "Now go feed him." She kicked me toward the buckling gate just as the hinges gave way. The metal groaned and collapsed in a cloud of rust and dust, and then he walked in. If the females were the result of genetic elegance, this thing was a monument to biological violence. He was nearly 9 feet tall, a bipedal nightmare of corded muscle and scar tissue. His fur was patchy, revealing gray, armored skin underneath. He didn't have the human intelligence in his eyes that Nala did. He had nothing but hunger and rage. He stood in the wreckage of the gate, sniffing the air, ignoring the 50 armed warriors surrounding him. He swatted a warrior aside with the back of his hand, sending her flying 20 feet into a pile of scrap metal. His bones didn't break, hers did. Then his yellow, bloodshot eyes locked onto me. The world stopped. He didn't roar, he smiled. A gruesome, lipless expression filled with serrated teeth. He had found the source of the scent. "Run!" Nala screamed, retreating into the shadows.
I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled over a pile of helicopter blades, my boots slipping in the mud. Behind me, I heard a sound like a freight train hitting a wall. He was charging. He wasn't fast, he was unstoppable. He smashed through the obstacles I had to climb over. I dived through the hollowed-out fuselage of a cargo plane, the metal screeching as his claws tore through the roof like it was paper. I could hear his breathing, heavy, wet, and getting closer. I burst out the other side into the scrap labyrinth, a sharp metal and oil pools. I was smaller, I was faster. I slid under a collapsed wing, the jagged metal scraping my back. The monster slammed into the wing, getting stuck for a second, roaring in frustration. That second saved my life. I scrambled into a narrow drainage pipe, crawling into the darkness, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I lay there in the dark, clutching the rusted spear, listening to him pacing above me. He was growling, sniffing the vents, hunting for the clean meat. I looked at my reflection in a puddle of dirty water. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't a cleaner. Nala hadn't released me to fight. She had released me to lead him away from her people. I was the live bait in a game I didn't understand. And looking at the darkness stretching out before me, I knew one thing for sure. The night had just begun.